Be sure. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, let's go. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Scottsdale Big Book Study, where we will study the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today's date is, it's Saturday, of course, and it's the 15th of August today. My name is Johan, and I'm a recovered compulsive overeater, and I'm from Sweden. I will be your host for today's study. We also have a bunch of co-hosts, Maria, Tammy, and then the interpreters that are doing a fantastic job. If you have any questions during the meeting, please contact either myself or any of the co-hosts by private message in the chat function. The chat function will be disabled until 5 minutes before the questions and answers session. Please note that the speaker, Harlan G, will be recorded for the duration of the study. However, the questions and answer session which follows will not be recorded. We ask if you can please make sure to keep your microphone on mute at all times during today's study, and also please turn off your video if you are exercising, if you are eating, or if you need to step away from your screen for any reason. During the meeting, we will post a link to our 7th tradition. This money goes towards the cost of our Zoom account, the cost of uploading our recordings, and we also send contributions to our intergroup, Arizona Serenity in the Desert Intergroup, ASDI, and the World Service Organization. We will post a link to the previous week's recordings. These are available by clicking on the link that will be posted in the chat box. Okay, so prepare yourself, put your seatbelts on. Here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, the only Harlan G. Take it away, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You won't probably need a seatbelt today unless you're driving. But we are in the foreword to the 2nd edition, and that's XVII, XVII, all the way at the bottom of the page. But as we usually do, what I'd like to do is sort of review what we did last week, because the foreword to the 2nd edition came out in 1955, and the fellowship had been going for 20 years, and the big book had been out for 15 years. And what we are talking about here in the foreword to the 2nd edition are some of the ways in which the fellowship grew, and the demand and the popularity grew for the book. And why was the book so important? Because it lays out the program of action. Without the book, I don't think that the fellowship would have survived on word of mouth recovery. Things get garbled, they get changed, they get, there was no clear direction on what to do or when to do it. So we have the growth of the fellowship as described in the foreword to the 2nd edition. And we see a little bit of the history there about the meeting between Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith. We see the growth of the fellowship really sprung from this meeting. We had Hank Parkhurst, he's going to get sober in New York, Fitzmayo, but this meeting between Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson came about in the aftermath of Bill Wilson going to Dr. Bob and going to Dr. Silkworth, going to Dr. Silkworth and saying, gosh, nobody's sobering up. And Dr. Silkworth says to him, yes, I've heard about some of the shenanigans you're pulling out there in the Bowery and Greenwich Village and all these other places. You've got to stop pulling these drunks out of the bar stools and talking to them about God from some moral hilltop. He says, you've got to explain to people that what I explained to you. You've got to explain to them that they have an allergy of the body and they have a twist of the mind that will condemn them to drink themselves to death unless they are acted upon by this outside force that I call God, some people call higher power, whatever it is you call it. And this is so integral to our history. Now let's go to page XVII, the very bottom of the page, and it says, with the appearance of the new book. Are you seeing that at the bottom of XVII? With the appearance of the new book, that's the big book he's talking about, a great deal began to happen. Dr. Harry Emerson Fosdick, he was a Seventh-day Adventist, the noted clergyman, reviewed it with approval. In the fall of 1939, Fosdick is not a Seventh-day Adventist. Fulton Ausler is a Seventh-day Adventist. Sorry about that. I gave you wrong information. Then editor of Liberty. Liberty is a magazine. Now, printed a piece in his magazine called Alcoholics and God. This brought a rush of 800 frantic inquiries into the little New York office, which meanwhile had been established. Each inquiry was painstakingly answered. Pamphlets and books were sent out. Businessmen traveling out of existing groups were referred to these prospective newcomers. New groups started up, and it was found, to the astonishment of everyone, that AA's message could be transmitted in the mail as well as by word of mouth. By the end of 1939, it was estimated that 800 alcoholics were on their way to recovery. Now, I just want to mention something again because it's important. Okay, today in our world, magazines hardly exist. Many magazines have gone under. Many magazines that were extremely popular have taken online guises, online identities, and the world is a very, very different place today than it was in the 1930s and early 40s. There was radio. Not everybody had access to radio. And there was magazines and newspapers and books. And that was basically what you had. There was no television. There was no internet. There was none of the things that we count on to entertain us. And there was movies, yes, and sports, and plays. But the bottom line is the world in that era was a very, very different place than the world we find ourselves in today. I can go online today and watch any movie basically ever made. I can watch reruns of every TV show ever made, with some exceptions, but I can watch anything I want at the flip of a click. And all I have to do is subscribe to that particular streaming service. Plus, I've got cable, I've got TV on my computer, I've got movie theaters within 5 minutes of my house. I have all manner of entertainment at my fingertips. But at this point in life, there was books, movies, magazines, and of course, radio. These were the forms of entertainment, and you were limited to those things. So we have a very different world today than we had at that time. Page XVIII. In the spring of 1940, John D. Rockefeller Jr. gave a dinner for many of his friends, to which he invited AA members to tell their stories. Now, before we talk more about this, I want to just remind you that Rockefeller was approached by Bill Wilson through his brother-in-law. Dorothy Wilson. Dorothy is Bill's sister. She married a guy by the name of Leonard Strong. And there was a period of time when Bill Wilson and Hank Parkhurst. Now, see, if Hank Parkhurst had not gone out and gotten drunk in September of 1939, he would have undoubtedly been the co-founder of AA. He had infinitely more to do with the book. He wrote one of the chapters to employers. It was in his office that the book was dictated to Ruth Hock. Hank Parkhurst had much more to do with this book and the early fellowship in New York, and Bob was in Akron, but because Hank got drunk by default, and Ebby got drunk, Hank got drunk, So by default, Dr. Bob really became recognized as the co-founder of AA. But Rockefeller was approached this way. Hank, Bill Wilson's brother-in-law was Dr. Leonard Strong, and Bill was in a situation where his stomach was really killing him. Bill suffered from gastritis most of his life. I have it too, but he drank liquor, and then when he stopped and so on, he still had flare-ups of gastritis, which I do not. He goes to his brother-in-law, the doctor, and he mentions to Leonard Strong, and this is some of the miracles that give us this unbelievable way of life. But Leonard Strong is treating Bill for gastritis, and Bill is rambling on and on and on about how all these rich people that they won't help them, they won't give them money. And Leonard Strong says to Bill Wilson, how about if we approach the Rockefellers? Well, John D. Rockefeller was the richest man in the world at that time. He owned what was called Standard Oil Company, which later became Amoco, and they so large, so vast, so powerful was Standard Oil that the government came in, and in an antitrust act, they split them up into various factions. But Rockefeller was very against drinking. And Leonard Strong said to Bill Wilson, his brother in law, I think I know Willard Richardson. And Willard Richardson, he took a Bible class from Willard Richardson when he was a child. He didn't know if Willard Richardson would still know him, but he knew that Willard Richardson was very close to John D. Rockefeller. He calls up the Rockefeller Company, calls up the company, and he says, I'm Dr. Len Strong. May I speak to Willard Richardson? He gets through to the guy. Now, if you've ever tried to get through to top people in big companies, you know how absolutely uphill a battle that is. I sell on the phone every day. I can tell you from my firsthand experience, it is very, very difficult to get people on the phone, especially since cell phones and caller ID. But this was well before that. This was well before that. He gets Willard Richardson on the phone. Miracle? Yes. Is it odd or is it God? I think it's God. Willard Richardson comes to the phone and he says, Leonard, my boy, where have you been keeping all these years? Why haven't I heard from you? And Willard Richardson and Len Strong start reminiscing about Leonard's Bible study days when he was much younger. Willard Richardson says to Len Strong, send this Wilson guy over here. Bill Wilson says, gosh, my stomach stopped hurting right away. He's going down to 30 Rockefeller Plaza in Manhattan, New York, to see one of John D. Rockefeller's closest compatriots. He says, well, he thought his ship had just come in. And he goes and he sees this guy, and the guy goes to Rockefeller, and they schedule kind of a dinner, a meeting. And he says, money will ruin this thing. I'm not going to give you a bunch of money. But what the Rockefeller Foundation did do is they issued a $5,000 grant so that Dr. Bob could pay his mortgage. Because Dr. Bob was helping so many people in Akron, he could not practice medicine. So Rockefeller issued Bob a $5,000 stipend, and it was parceled out, I believe, $100 a month, something like that, $25 a week, and that was how it was parceled out. And he said, but don't ask me for any more money. By the way, I know what you might be thinking. We're not supposed to accept outside donations. Well, this was before that was written, number one. Number two, every nickel that the Rockefeller Foundation gave to Dr. Bob was repaid in full by AA once they got rolling. They repaid everything. So in the spring of 40, this would be in this is actually, the truth is it's not the spring, it's February 8th, 1940. February, at least not in Chicago, February is not spring. February is miserable. Well, they scheduled this dinner, and Fitzmayo was there, and Dr. Silkworth was there, Bill Wilson was there, Dr. Bob was there, Clarence Snyder was there, Dr. Emerson Fosdick, Harry Emerson Fosdick was there, and they packed these people in, these followers of Rockefeller. And what happened at this dinner was they allowed these alcoholics to tell their stories. Well, I'm going to let the book tell you because it tells you better than me. All right. He invited AA members to tell their stories. News of this got on the world wires. Inquiries poured in again, and many people went to the bookstores to get the book Alcoholics Anonymous. By March 1941, just a little over a year after this dinner, the membership had shot up to 2,000. Then Jack Alexander wrote a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post and placed such a compelling picture of AA before the general public that alcoholics in need of help really deluged us. By the close of 1941, AA numbered 8,000 members. The mushrooming process was in full swing. AA had become a national institution. Now, the name Jack Alexander doesn't mean much to you in 2026. The guy's been dead for about 70 years, whatever. Well, Jack Alexander was not writing an article about AA to expand on its virtues. Jack Alexander was there as an investigative reporter. He was trying to find out what is the angle here? What is going on here? What's the angle? What's the scheme? What's going on here? So he goes and he writes these articles after going to meetings, and he interviewed people in Akron, and he interviewed people in New York, and he tried to find the dirt on AA, and he could not find any. So here's this very skeptical Mike Wallace kind of reporter. Mike Wallace was on 60 Minutes. He was an investigative reporter, if you remember back then. Well, here he is painting an absolutely compelling picture of AA before the public. He is telling the public, after much work, that AA is on the up and up, but more than being on the up and up, it is actually helping people afflicted with alcoholism. He is telling people this thing is not only on the level, this thing is fantastic. It is great. And so people are looking at AA and they're saying, I'm dragging my uncle there. I'm dragging my dad there. I'm dragging people, whatever that may be. Some of them got sober, some of them didn't. But the more publicity from Rockefeller, from Ausler, from all these Jack Alexander, the Saturday Evening Post was an extremely popular magazine. One of the artists that painted covers for the Saturday Evening Post was Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell, most of his famous pictures were painted as covers to the Saturday Evening Post. I remember very, very well going to the doctor, going to the dentist, going whatever, and you'd go to these places. One of the magazines that was always on the table when you'd go there was the Saturday Evening Post. Now they kind of assume you're going to just play with your phone, so they don't have magazines much in the waiting room. But when I was a kid and you went to the barber, you went to the doctor, the dentist, whoever it was, they had magazines, Time, Life, Look, all these various magazines. Later on, People magazine and all these various Sports Illustrated, things like that. These were national institutions. These magazines were as popular and as important as the channels that you watch on TV and HBO and whatever it is you like to watch, CBS, NBC, ABC, public broadcasting, whatever that may be. These magazines were there and people grew very attached to them. This guy likes Look, this guy likes Life, this guy likes Time, this guy likes whatever. There was all various magazines. All right, bottom of XVII. So the population is growing and growing. The buzz is on. Our society then entered a fearsome and exciting adolescent period. Now we're in the mid 40s. And what's going to start happening in the mid 40s? Well, the traditions are right around the corner, boys and girls. Okay, the test that it faced was this. Could large numbers of erstwhile erratic alcoholics successfully meet and work together? In other words, when it was just a small little outfit, everybody kind of got along and they would defer. If Dr. Bob said blue, it was blue. If Bill Wilson in New York said red, it was red, whatever it was. Would there be quarrels over membership, leadership, and money? Would there be strivings for power and prestige? Would there be schisms that would split AA apart? Soon AA was beset by these very problems on every side and in every group. But out of this frightening and at first disrupting experience, the conviction grew that AAs had to hang together or die separately. What's the first tradition? Unity. The first tradition is for unity. We had to unify our fellowship or pass off the scene. You had a guy down in Florida. He was selling memberships for $100, lifetime membership. And Bill Wilson got a hold of this information. He says, what the hell are you doing? What right do you have to do this? There's no dues or fees here. Anybody that wants to recover can come. He says, you don't understand, Bill. This is Florida. And if these people don't have to pay for something, they won't take it seriously. They have to have dues or they won't take it seriously. And Bill Wilson told him unequivocally, knock it off. Stop doing that. Don't do that. Don't charge anybody for admission into AA. And you had all these various, you had a guy, he wrote into the AA office and he had started a club like the North Scottsdale Fellowship Club, or in Chicago, you have what's called the Four Nickels, 5555 Lincoln. You have a club there, and then you have the Lincoln Park Al-Anon Club. You have various Al-Anon clubs around the world, around the country. And he got all these things, and he had 61 rules for membership in this club that he had started. And Bill Wilson is reading this and he starts laughing and he writes the guy back a letter and he says, let this be rule 62. Don't take yourself so damn seriously. So he wrote back basically telling the guy, abandon your rules. The only rule we need is, do you have a desire to stop drinking? Do you have a desire to stop gambling? Or whatever, compulsively eating? Do you have a desire to stop taking drugs or whatever that is? That is enough to get you in the door. You don't have to follow any rules. I mean, obviously, you can't be disruptive or you can't be hitting on people for money or for whatever, or, whatever that is. But all right, XIX. As we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, the principles are the steps. All this stuff that came, the principle of the first one is honesty, and the principle of the other one is anger, whatever it is. That's way decades after these guys were dead. When he's referring to the principles, he's referring to the steps, not these other things, by which the individual alcoholic could live. So we had to evolve principles by which the AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. In other words, he's introducing them to what we know today as the traditions. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society, that our leaders might serve but never govern. Do you hear the traditions in here? That each group was to be autonomous and there was to be no professional class of therapy, There was to be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. There was to be the least possible organization, even in our service centers. Our public relations were to be based on attraction rather than promotion. So you're hearing the traditions here. We're in the mid 40s, early 50s, and in 1950, they were approved. So you're in the 40s, not the 50s yet. You're in the 40s. In 50, they will be approved in Cleveland. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. Today, they throw in other public media of communication, the internet, and things like that. You want to be anonymous, although it sometimes can be very tough to do that because a lot of movie stars and TV stars, they go on TV and they talk about their involvement in 12-step programs. I don't know why they do that, but they do that. And if they relapse, people are not going to think, oh, this guy didn't work his program. They're going to think that AA or OA or whatever it is doesn't work. And so it can become very dangerous. And a lot of them are writing books and they're doing podcasts and stuff like that. That can be very dangerous. And in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversy. We don't have opinions on the drugs and the weight loss surgeries, and we don't have opinions on that. That is not our job. That is not our thing. We don't have opinions on that. We are not there to enter into any type of controversy. And these are things we want to desperately avoid, is controversies. We're not doctors. We're not God. We don't know what's right for someone else. This was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book. Though none of these principles, steps, had, or now in this case traditions, had the force of rules or laws, they had become so widely accepted by 1950 that they were confirmed by our first international conference held at Cleveland. Today, the remarkable unity of AA is one of the greatest assets that our society has. So it was very, very important that unity be the first of the traditions. Our main thing is unity, that we're together. There were a lot of schisms. Why was the convention in Cleveland? Let's cover that. You had the people in Akron, and they were saying, the word came down, they wanted to have a convention. And they said, we're not going to New York with those high steppers, those people from New York, those goofballs. And the people in New York says, oh, we're not going to Akron, religious lunatics out there, holy rollers out there. Yuck. We're not going to Akron. So the compromise became Cleveland. And they wanted to do it in such a way that it would be close to Dr. Bob, because Dr. Bob was stricken with cancer and he died in November of 1950, just a few months after the summer convention of AA in Cleveland in 1950. Dr. Bob passed away. So they wanted to do it in Cleveland because at least it was close to Dr. Bob. So everybody agreed on Cleveland. But the Akron people weren't very big fans of the New Yorkers, and the New Yorkers weren't big fans of Akron. When the book was being published in Akron, they didn't leave the Oxford group until September of 1939, when Clarence Snyder started sponsoring some guys from Cleveland that were Roman Catholic. And the Roman Catholic bishop said to these guys, I don't want you attending meetings of the Oxford group. The Oxford group was a Protestant group. And so Clarence Snyder said to Dr. Bob, listen, there's going to be more Catholics coming in here. We've got to pull out of the Oxford group. And Dr. Bob didn't want to pull out of the Oxford group. He says, man, when they were drinking, they weren't such good Catholics. Why do they have to be such good Catholics now? And Clarence Snyder said, Bob, you're missing the point. We've got to pull out of the Oxford group. And Dr. Bob dug his heels in. He didn't want to. He figured the Oxford group had got them this far. Why pull out of it now? And so push came to shove. And in September of 1939, Clarence Snyder had the first meeting of AA, not the Oxford group, at his house in Cleveland. And Oxford groupers like Bob's friends and that, they came up there to protest. We don't want you breaking away from the Oxford group. The Oxford group got us sober, and the Oxford group has worked for us thus far. Why do you feel the need to pull away? Again, Roman Catholics were coming in, Jews were coming in, Muslim, whatever. People were coming in from different backgrounds, and they didn't want to go to a Protestant institution like the Oxford group. It was not something that they wanted to do, but they were more than willing to come to a non-sectarian AA that we have today, rather than a group that is Christian and Protestant in nature. So a lot of this it doesn't get a presentation here because we're so far beyond it. We just assume that there's an AA, and we assume that AA is non-sectarian, which it is. But for many, many Roman Catholics and many, many people of other religions, going to the Oxford group meetings was not palatable for them because they themselves were not Protestant Christians. Okay. Let's go to the bottom of XIX. I'm not voicing an opinion on religions. I'm just telling you what happened. I'm just giving you the history. I'm not voicing any type of opinion at all whatsoever. While I'm at the bottom of XIX, while the internal difficulties of our adolescent period were being ironed out, public acceptance of AA grew by leaps and bounds. And this is extremely important. This is extremely, extremely important. And the bottom line is that the public accepting it, the public accepting AA is vital to our growth. For this, there were two principal reasons. The large numbers of recovery, biggest factor, people were recovering, and reunited homes. These made their impressions everywhere. Of alcoholics who came to AA and really tried, 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder of those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Other thousands came to a few AA meetings and at first decided they didn't want the program, but great numbers of these, about two out of three, began to return as time passed. Well, let's take a look at what we have here. We have about a 75% recovery rate in AA at that time. Now, 50% got sober at once, 25% got sober after coming back from a relapse. Well, let's take a look at our numbers today in OA and what is the biggest difference that you have. In today's OA, you have a very low recovery rate. And the biggest reason is we have strayed away from an uncut, pure message that the book has, in my opinion. Now, there are people here or people in OA today, they hate the big book of AA, and that's their right, and that's fine. They use OA literature or they use whatever it is that they use, and that's fine. Whatever works for you, God bless you. But if you take a look at the numbers of recoveries today, you find a strikingly lower rate of recovery. Some of that is that we've gotten away from a very pure message of recovery. And some of that is also we have a in our particular addiction, which is to food, you have a multi-billion-dollar industry. I mean, multi-billion-dollar industry telling people you only need this pill, you only need this procedure, you only need to see us, you need to come here, we will medicate you, we will give you the diet, we will do this, we will do that, and this is how you're going to recover. You also have a lot of people today that come in that are very, very high bottom people. They're affected by compulsive overeating, but not to the extent these guys were or I was. If you look at the guy behind me, that's me. And that's a guy that's about 650 pounds. That's a guy that could not function at any level. You can't get from that guy to where I am today. I'm healthier, even though I'm older. I'm 40 years older than him. You can't get from him to me without the program. There's no map. There's no way of getting there without God, without the program. But you have a lot of people coming in, and this is not the most important thing in their life without exception, because if they recover, that's fantastic. If they don't, that's okay too. But in the early days of AA, you had really only very low bottom cases coming in. What is the difference between a high bottom and a low bottom? A low bottom is very, very affected. Low bottom is extremely affected by this illness, and a high bottom is lesser affected. I have long believed, and this is my opinion, I am not giving you a fact. I cannot medically prove this. I cannot show you this in scripture. I cannot show you this in the big book. I'm giving you my opinion, and I want to be extremely clear that this is my opinion. You are free to ignore it. You are not free to argue with me about it because it serves no purpose. This is my opinion. I believe that this disease is a spectrum disorder. What does that mean? It means that we are affected identically, the physical allergy and the twist of the mind, but we are not affected equally. Some of us are more serious cases than others. Everybody goes through their own hell, but for some people, they may be seriously affected, but they're unwilling at any point to really take action not to overeat the food or not to eat the foods that they know damn well they shouldn't be eating, candy or pizza or, French fries or whatever it is that they know damn well is going to trigger that physical allergy, that they know damn well is going to put them in a position where they cannot control the amount of food they eat. So they eat it anyway, and they just will not take that action. And they're hoping against hope that tomorrow will be better. Tomorrow will be different. They're going to kick that can down the road in hopes that tomorrow it'll be better, when the reality is tomorrow will be worse. Why is tomorrow going to be worse? Because it is a progressive disease. Whether you're high bottom or low bottom, this is a permanent, progressive, and if untreated, fatal illness. So tomorrow, it will not get better. It will actually get worse. It will get worse. So the reason that you have such high recovery rates at the very beginning was that the message was untainted, and the people coming in had such shattered lives that they became willing, in most cases, about 75% of the cases, to do the work necessary to recover. And there are a lot of people today that are befuddled and confused. They're hearing this is the way to do step 10, and that's the way to do step 10, and that's the way to do step 11, and that's the way to do step 11. And there's all these various methods that are floating around on how to do this and how to do that. Well, the big book is not a menu. It doesn't say take one from column A and one from column B. It doesn't say that. It says, here's how to work step 4. Here's how to work step 10. Here's how to work step 1. It doesn't give you a bunch of choices. But today, there are as many ways of doing some of these steps as there are people in OA. And again, we are hurting ourselves. We're shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that, because I heard a speaker recently. She said there's many ways to work step 10. Not in the big book I have. On page 84, it only gives one way. It doesn't give 7 ways and say, and this is part of the reason that we are not as effective in recovery as we could be, because we are diluting the message. It's a very important piece of information here about the recovery rates in the early AA period. Now, there's one other factor, and then we'll leave this subject. Those guys sponsored. They got busy. They sponsored other people. And today you've got a lot of people that say things that are not justifiable in the book, like you don't have to sponsor, you can just read the traditions at the meeting, or you can be the treasurer, or you can be in charge of the speaker getting, and you don't have to sponsor. It doesn't say that in the big book. It says you have to sponsor. So the bottom line is that you have a situation where the message gets diluted. And if we can stop diluting the message, maybe we won't get to 75%. Probably not. But we can do better than what we're doing now. We can do better than what we're doing now. Okay, page XX. Another reason for the wide acceptance of AA was the ministration of friends in medicine, religion, and the press, together with innumerable others who became our able and persistent advocates. Without such support, AA could have made only the slowest progress. Some of the recommendations of AA's early medical and religious friends will be found further on in this book. I go to a cardiologist twice a year. When I first started going to my cardiologist, and he deals with obesity, he deals with high blood pressure, he deals with AFib, he deals with all kinds of obesity-related maladies. He had never heard of Overeaters Anonymous in his life. And my regular physician, my regular doctor over here, not 2 minutes from my house, she had never heard of Overeaters Anonymous in their life. So we're kind of falling down on PIPO, public information professional outreach. We're sort of falling down on that. We really need to kind of look at that and say, gosh, we could really do a better job of that. Educating the medical profession, the psychiatry, therapists, doctors, as to what OA is, how to get in touch with OA, and so on. We could certainly do a better job. Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. Neither does AA take any particular medical point of view, though we cooperate widely with the men of medicine as well as the men of religion. Alcohol being no respecter of persons, we are an accurate cross-section of America, and in distant lands, the same democratic evening up process is now going on. By personal religious affiliation, we include Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Hindus, and a sprinkling of Muslims and Buddhists. More than 15% of us are women. Those numbers today would be obviously be very, very different. When I was new in OA, I came in 1979. Our meetings were much bigger. We didn't have Zoom. So we had live meetings. We had active treatment centers in Chicago. We had the Rader Institute, now gone. We had the Parkside now gone. But we had meetings where there'd be 100, 150, 75, 80 people, depending on the meeting. And there'd be these little school buses outside some of the big meetings. And those were the people from the treatment centers. Well, those are gone. The insurance company pulled the funding because the recidivism rate of the disease was 100%. They're paying $38,000, $40,000 for 6 months in the treatment center, and the person was back within a very short period of time. They said, nope, we're not going to fund this anymore. They have treatment centers that will take you, but you got to be prepared to shoulder the burden of a lot of that yourself. But the bottom line is, where was I going with this? Oh, yes. I was frequently the only man in the room, or there'd be another guy. One guy was named Art, another guy's name was Larry, and there was another guy named Tom. We were the only men in the room in early 79, 80, 81. Today, I dare say that probably 30 or more percent, not all the cameras are on, and I can't go through here while I'm talking to see all the names, but I'm going to guesstimate that probably 30, 35% of the people or more that are here today are male. And when we have our regular Scottsdale meeting,
Really?
we have probably 30, 35% of our people that are male. So the bottom line is things are definitely changing. Things do change, and the religious breakdown, and some of these things have changed. Some of it maybe not, but I think most of it has. At present, bottom of XX, at present, our membership is pyramiding at the rate of about 20% per year. That's probably still true in AA, not so much in OA. One of the reasons is in AA, they do not have a multi-billion-dollar industry of TV ads and internet ads and all kinds of advertisements telling people you don't need AA, we can get you sober. We've got a gym, and we've got this, and we'll give you a pill, we'll give you a potion, we'll give you whatever we'll give you, and you will never drink again. Well, we don't have that in OA. We've got 19 food programs. There are 19 12-step programs that deal with food. That's a lot. We're dividing up the pie. And there are pockets of meetings in OA where if I didn't know for sure I was in an OA meeting and I closed my eyes, I wouldn't know where the hell I was, because they're talking about anything but the recovery in the book and abstaining from compulsive overeating. There are many, many meetings of OA where you do not have anybody, or you have just one or two, maybe if you're lucky, people that are in recovery. And we can certainly do better there. So we're not pyramiding at 20% a year. We're flat or going down. I believe that the membership of OA has actually gone down quite a bit, and we can do better than what we've been doing. So far upon the total problem, I'm at the top of XXI. So far upon the total problem of several million actual and potential alcoholics in the world, we have made only a scratch. In all probability, we shall never be able to touch more than a fair fraction of the alcohol problem in all its ramifications. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. Yet it is our great hope that all those who have yet found no answer may begin to find one in the pages of this book, and will presently join us on the high road to a new freedom. I was taken with this particular forward. This particular forward of the 4 forwards is my favorite. But we can do a better job. Now, how do you do a better job? How do I do a better job of attracting people to the rooms of OA? We do a job by recovering. St. Francis of Assisi said, preach the gospel, and if you must, use words. You are carrying a message. You are carrying a message whether you want to be carrying one or not. There are people that can honestly say they have been attending meetings of OA for many decades, and they are significantly in the disease. They have not ever put together any type of abstinence. They have never put together any time of abstinence, and people look at them and they think this OA must not work. But if we are in recovery and we are out there and we are among people and they know, if they know we're in OA, we are drawing them in like a welcome mat, because we are saying to that person, and they're at the picnic for the company, or they're at the picnic for the church or the synagogue, and they notice you're not eating the cookies, you're not eating the bagels, you're not eating the pizza, you're not eating these things, and you seem happy in your release. There will be people, I promise you, that will come up to you and say, how are you doing this? I can't seem to do this. I can't seem to not eat the crap that has been killing me my whole life. And you're not one of those people that says, okay, just for today, I'm going to have a cookie. Just for today, I'm going to have whatever. You're not doing that. You're not eating it, and you are doing so happily. You become a beacon. You become a beacon of this program when you do that. And if you have people that know you and they know you're in OA, and you're sitting there with cookies, or you're sitting there with pasta or pizza or whatever it is, and you're shoveling it in, there, you are not welcoming them to OA. You are inviting them to come to the conclusion that OA simply does not work, because if it worked, you wouldn't be doing that. So we are carrying a message. I remember well the summer when my daughter was 19 months old. My daughter was born in 94, so this would be the summer of 95 or 96, whatever it is. And she was running around in a diaper, and it was a Sunday morning. And so my then wife, had just bought the whole grocery store. And my daughter opened up the refrigerator and she said, "Shit, Esther, there's nothing in here." I wonder where she learned that from. She learned that from Daddy. She learned that from me. I would open the refrigerator and turn to my ex-wife now, but she was my wife then, and say, "Shit, Esther, there's nothing in here." A few years later, I'm in very good recovery. I got abstinent in December of 98, which is 27, almost 28 years ago. And I'm home. Now we're living in Scottsdale, and I've got a TV that's about as big as a garage door. And well, she's still my daughter, but she comes in and she says, there was a show called My Name is Earl, about a guy and his brother who used to rob houses, and they won the lottery, and they're going around saying they're sorry to people that they had robbed. And she came in and she said, "Well, those guys are just doing their eighth and ninth step, right, Dad?" Without a word from me. This was the message that I was carrying at that time. So at first I was carrying a message of the disease, and then I carried a message of the recovery to this little daughter of mine. But the bottom line is that we are all carrying a message. We are all messengers. Some of us are cautionary tales. Some of us are invitations to come in and try this program. So if I'm a cautionary tale, I have to stop pawning off that job to other people. I am not the only miracle here. U1 is in Sweden is not the only miracle here. Maria is not the only miracle here. There are many, and there's other ones. I just don't know, I can't go through here now. But there are, the miracles of OA are not for the chosen few. It's not for just some of us who are lucky enough, and you're an unfortunate person that you don't have this miracle. No, that's not the way it works. You have to work your ass off. You have to work your ass off at this program. You have to make this not your whole life. No, nothing was intended for this to be your whole life, but you have to do the work. And if you do the work, you'll have what we have. If you do what we do, you'll have what we have. Kim G out in New Jersey says, we're very sorry you didn't get any results from the work you didn't do. You don't do the work, you don't get the results. This doesn't happen because you wait till enough tomorrows. This happens when you see pizza or you see candy or cookies, and instead of eating it and saying, F it, I'm going to eat today and hopefully tomorrow will be better. It starts when you make it better, making a call and saying, hi, I'm at the church picnic. Hi, I'm at the school reunion. Hi, I'm at the shopping mall. Hi, I'm at the grocery store. Hi, I'm with my friends out for coffee and I want to eat ice cream. And you make a call and you say, I want to eat ice cream and here's what's going on with me. And then you don't eat the ice cream. That's where the rubber meets the road. You have to stop fighting food on your own willpower. How's that working for you so far? If it was working for you so far, you probably wouldn't be here today. You probably wouldn't be here today. So if you want different, you got to do different. And if you don't want different and you're doing just fine, share that with your doctor. Share that with your cardiologist, your specialist, your podiatrist, your infectious disease doctor, your dentist, your endodontist, your psychiatrist, your therapist. Share that with people if you feel comfortable doing that. That's fine. If you don't, that's fine. I'm in OA and I'm recovering. And maybe bring some literature, send for some literature, or go to a live meeting, grab some literature and bring it to the cardiologist's office. I bring how to get started in OA. I bring different OA literature. I bring them to the cardiologist's office and I put them in the waiting room. I don't wait for somebody to tell me to do it. I do it. You can't get from the guy behind me to where I am today without a lot of hard work. There are Saturday mornings I get up and I don't feel like doing this. And I say to myself, I've been given a great gift. I've been given not only a great gift, I have been given thousands of great gifts. Thousands of great gifts. And the gratitude that I have in my heart propels me to do this work. A grateful heart doesn't eat compulsively. I count my blessings every day. When I talk to my sponsees, every day I say to them, what are you grateful for today? A grateful heart doesn't put food in their mouth like that. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. And I say to my sponsees every single day, I say, thank you for helping God keep me out of the food for one more day because I need them more than they need me. It's been a great, great journey. We're not done. We're going to do the forward to the third edition, the forward to the fourth edition, and then we're going to start the doctor's opinion. I don't know how far. The next few readings are quick, so we should get to the doctor's opinion probably next week. I'd be surprised if we didn't. But the bottom line is that we have a situation where if you want different, you got to do different. You can't keep doing the same and thinking the same and hoping against hope that tomorrow will be better because it's not going to be. It's going to be worse. So you got to make that call. You've got to do whatever it is you have to do, or you will eat yourself to death if you have this disease. If you have this disease, you will eat yourself into oblivion. It is very, very unlikely that you will be struck by lightning and all of a sudden get this disease. All right, we're going to start questions and answers. We're like 2 minutes